Hi, can you hear that? There are kids playing outside my house right now. They're laughing, arguing, running around, probably making up rules to a game that only makes sense to them. And I had the strangest thought. I wonder if they know that they're making memories they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to get back. Of course they don't, because that's the thing about ordinary moments. You never know they're important while you're living them. I've been thinking about grief recently, not because anyone died or because anything terrible specifically happened, but just because I think there are so many things that we grieve that we never actually call grief. I don't think anyone prepares you for how much life quietly disappears. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a little at a time. I've lived on the same street for most of my life. If I walked outside right now, I'd probably recognize almost everything. The road, the speed bumps, the neighbors, most of it hasn't really changed. Only I have. Well, almost everything. There used to be this huge tree a little further down the road, at least I remember it being huge, you know? When you're a kid, everything feels bigger than it actually is. We used to climb it all the time. And I remember the lady whose house it stood outside would always come out and shout at us to get down. And we'd quietly wait for her to get back inside and then climb straight back up. I walked past it recently and it wasn't there anymore. Well, not really. It's just a stump now. The trunk was cut down and there are different kids who sit on what's left of it. They probably have no idea that before it used to be a place to sit, it was a place to climb. You know? It's strange because for a second, I wasn't looking at a tree, I was looking at proof that time had passed. I remember my mom used to make me read flashcards when I was little because reading didn't come so naturally to me. I remember sitting there, sounding out the words one letter at a time, getting it wrong, her shouting at me crying because I got it wrong, you know? Back then, reading was just homework. It was just another thing I had to get through. I don't think either of us imagined that years later, I'd voluntarily spend hours writing. Not because anyone asked me to, but because they're just thoughts that refuse to leave me alone until I write them down. And I think that's what I mean when I say ordinary life is strange. The biggest changes don't usually feel big while they're happening. One day, you're struggling to read flashcards. Then, one random Tuesday, you're sitting in front of a microphone trying to explain what it feels like to be alive. I think that's true for almost everything. The last sleepover with your cousins, the last time your parents carried you because you fell asleep in the car, the last day everyone in your family lived under the same roof. The last day of school before it wasn't just another school year. It was just the last one. The ordinary conversation with someone before they slowly become a stranger. Nobody tells you these moments are ending because to everyone else, it's just Tuesday. I think every version of ourselves ends on an ordinary day. Not on birthdays, not on New Year's Eve, not after some dramatic speech with emotional music playing in the background, just on a random Tuesday. You wake up, live your life, go to sleep, and without even realizing, that version of you never exists again. I think that's what makes ordinary life so strange. It only becomes extraordinary in hindsight. When we're younger, we imagine life in these big chunks, these big moments, you know, graduation, marriage, your first job, moving out, the things people put dramatic music behind. But when I actually think about the moments that changed me, they weren't cinematic at all. They were just so ordinary. I didn't even notice them. Maybe that's why nostalgia feels so strange, because you're not actually homesick for a place. You're homesick for the version of yourself that existed there. You don't miss the house, you miss the person who lived in it. And maybe that's why growing up feels so confusing because no one announces it. There's no email, there's no ceremony, there's no point where someone sits you down and says, "Congratulations, from this day forward, you'll never be this version of yourself again." It just keeps happening quietly every single day. Sometimes I think we imagine grief as this big catastrophic emotion, something reserved for funerals and breakups, just any loss. But I wonder if grief is much more ordinary than that. Maybe grief is just love, meeting time. Maybe that's why certain songs hurt. Maybe that's why driving past your old school feels weird. Or why finding an old WhatsApp voice note makes your chest feel heavy for a second. Nothing is wrong. Nothing needs fixing. You're just suddenly standing in two different versions of your life at once. I wonder how many versions of ourselves we've already outlived. The child who couldn't wait to become an adult. The teenager who thought people in their 20s had it all figured out. The version of me who thought I'd wake up one day and magically know what I was doing. They're all just gone. Not because they failed, but because that's what time does. It quietly asks you to become someone else. I think the strangest part about being alive is that we're constantly becoming memories, even to ourselves. Maybe that's why ordinary days matter so much, because one day, one of them, will be the last Tuesday before your life changes, the last hug before someone moves away, the last family dinner where everyone is exactly as they are now, the last time someone says your name in a way they'll never say it again. And you won't know because it'll just feel ordinary. So those kids are probably still playing outside, still laughing, still arguing over absolutely nothing, completely unaware that 20 years from now, one of them might walk past the place they used to play. Maybe there'll be a wall where there used to be a field. Maybe the house they grew up in will belong to someone else. Maybe the tree they used to climb will be a stump with different kids sitting on it. And for a second, they won't be looking at a place. They'll be looking at proof that time passed. Not because those days were extraordinary, but because they weren't. So maybe the goal isn't to notice every moment. I don't think that's possible. Maybe it's just to remember that this version of your life is temporary too. Not in a scary way, just in a human way. I don't really know if there's a lesson here. I don't think there has to be. I just think it's strangely comforting to know that the ache we sometimes feel for ordinary things isn't because we're broken. It's because we loved them. And maybe that's the price of getting to love anything at all. So, anyway, those are just some unfinished thoughts. See you in the next one.